At ICNA Relief USA, we believe that charity begins at home. In the last 5 years, we have served over 5.2 million people with our core values of sincerity, sacrifice, and service. And it all starts with you, our volunteers and our donors. You volunteered your time and donated your money to help people when they needed it most. In 2022, you served your communities and volunteered for over 60,000 hours throughout the United States. Continue to support ICNA Relief. Visit www.icnarelief.org.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to our daily ITV USA show, Balancing Deen and Dunya. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail and I am thrilled to see you every day in Ramadan as we meet with different CEOs, founders, individuals who are serving the community and learn a little bit more about the work they do, the organizations they lead, and the way that they find balance in their lives. So today, alhamdulillah, we're honored to have an individual who is at the helm of an incredible organization, which you just heard a little bit about, ICNA Relief. So I'll share a little bit about ICNA Relief with you and then introduce our esteemed guest for today. Several years ago, many of the major Muslim charities were focused more on overseas activities rather than social services and support for difficulties that Muslims may be facing and others may be facing here in the US. So the vacuum in terms of a Muslim presence in social services really existed and was quite prevalent. During that period of time, ICNA Relief USA was able to change that perception. With a nationwide network of shelter homes for women and children, free clinics, food pantries, counseling centers, back-to-school programs, disaster relief services, and a robust and transparent system for zakat and fitra distribution, along with a refugee assistance program, ICNA Relief has put the Muslim community in the forefront as an asset in terms of all of society. From New York to LA, from Houston to Chicago, you'll find thousands of volunteers helping Muslims and non-Muslim neighbors, really putting the best form of da'wah into action. So today on our show, it's my honor to introduce the person who is currently helming and at the wheel of ICNA Relief USA, Brother Maqsood Ahmad. He's the CEO of ICNA Relief USA. He has been in this position for the past several years. He holds an MS in Civil Engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology. So Brother Maqsood, welcome, welcome. We're happy to have you with us on our show.
Thank you, and Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Mubarak to you as well. So, we just got to watch a little clip about ICNA Relief and the incredible work that you do across the US. I'd love to hear a little bit from you about the impact of that work and how ICNA Relief being at the forefront of social services in the US has impacted our communities and the US at large.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Dr. Suzy, for this opportunity. And as you mentioned in your intro, that just few years ago, and even now, majority of the Muslim charities, they are focused for international relief, and for right reason. There are needs. And another factor, there's a human factor, that many of the first generation Muslims who came over here came from the third world country. There's poverty, their needs, where we grew up. So naturally, when there's a disaster, there's a flood, there's a tsunami or anything, we know the poverty over there. But over here, a good number of Muslims, and I will be very frank, like rather than having a very formal, a large number of the first generation immigrants, they came as students. They were very smart, and they came into the universities, but difficult time, student life, and right away got the professional degrees from engineering and medical and businesses, and they were right from the universities, they got good jobs, settled in those areas where there's no, at least on the surface, there's no such need. So that feeling never developed that there's a need over here in this country. That was one reason. Second, naturally, those family roots. So combined these two factors, most of the focus was that the collect fund over here and send overseas. But fact of the matter is that number one, there are 6 million Muslims in this country. And of course, it's not only 6 million Muslim, that's our immediate family, extended family of 330 million Muslim. There are millions, there are different statistics available that close to 40 million people, they don't have the luxury of 3 daily meals. They are food insecure. It means that if they have to put food on the table for the children, they have to either facing the challenge of a utility gone, they are not able to pay the utility bills, or other needs, even the basic needs. And there are millions who don't have health insurance. But I think one major trigger, and which opened the eyes of us, that was Hurricane Katrina in 2005. When 2 million people in New Orleans became homeless overnight in such a situation, there were 15,000 Muslims among them as well. And it so happened that the closest city, New Orleans, is Baton Rouge. And those 15,000, it was a small Islamic center over there at that time. Of course, some people went to their relatives and others, but still there were thousands who have no place to go. Other organizations, Jewish organization, Christian organization, they have like Catholic Charities, Lutheran Social Services, Nikama, and many others, but there was no formal Muslim presence in that area. That first time we realized that this can happen to us. And when you see one catastrophe, this situation, then you interact with the other, then realize that this is not one-time situation. There are people who are homeless. We opened our first shelter home in New York, and I will be very frank that originally it was that maybe there's some sister accept Islam, or there are some new Muslims, they don't have the place to go. But after just a few months, we realized that there are hundreds within the Muslim community, the domestic violence issue, the divorce, husband died, deported, there are issues that there are hundreds. And now we have 26 shelter home, but still there are long waiting list, so on and so forth. I can continue. There are, unfortunately, within last 35, 40 years, a large number of refugees are from the Muslim countries. Long list: Iraq, Syria, Burma, Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen. Unfortunately, there's a chaos in many war and catastrophes, both man-made and human disasters, unfortunately. And when they come over here, they live in very pathetic situation. Sometime, I'll say that worse than even the back home, that after 2-3 months, there's a wrong perception that they are given a very luxury life over here. A very basic help is given, and after 2-3 months, that is cut off. They don't know the culture, they don't know the language, and they going through a lot of miseries. And those are hundreds of thousands. So I took a little long, but these are the realities on the ground that which when we started this work, that really was an eye-opener. And now, as you mentioned, that Alhamdulillah, realizing that we were able to educate the Muslim community that this is our home, our future of our generation, children is over here, and this is our responsibility, not only to take care of our family of 6 million of Muslims, rather in the extended family of 330 million. Anybody who is in need, the first people they should think of is the Muslims. That's the teaching of our deen.
Absolutely. So Jazakallah khair, Brother Maqsood. You definitely gave us a comprehensive overview in response to my first question. But you raised 3 really important points, and I want to kind of explore those 3 points a little bit more. The first point you talked about was the impact of Hurricane Katrina and how this was kind of the wake-up call for the Muslim community that, yes, even here within the US, people struggle and need social services, and there is that vacuum that needs to be filled. So I recall reading Dave Egger's book, Zaytoon, which was the story of a Muslim family in Hurricane Katrina. And many people, upon reading that book, felt that, wait, I had no idea that there were so many Muslims even in that area of Louisiana. So you mentioned dawah work and the impact that being in the social services field can have in terms of dawah. Can you tell us a little bit more about the dawah work that ICNA Relief does?
As they say that the action speaks louder than the words. Dawah is not just what you can make any claims, but what people see, what are your actions? How that dawah, the teaching, your whatever religion, whatever teaching you follow, how that translates you as an individual and as a community. Of course, community is a collection of individuals that how they react at the time of need, how they react to their neighbors. One thing is reading in the hadith that if your neighbor goes hungry and you sleep full stomach, you're not a believer. Yeah. These are such strong. But other thing is that as a community, are we doing it? Are we known for it? Yes. So although our community is very generous, but before we started these activities, the perception was not right. There was no that it's not that people were not generous before, they were still giving, but the understanding was not right, and generally community was not educated about the needs over here, even about the needs of the Muslim community. So when these actions started after Hurricane Katrina, we served more than 70 disasters. Every single declared disaster ICNA Relief. That's not about ICNA Relief. That's Muslim for Humanity. That's our young children, students, professionals going out. And when people are seeing you serving, you don't have to say a word. Yes. That speaks for itself. We have 43, if I think that's the latest number, 43 food delivery vans in from Miami to Boston and New York and Chicago and Seattle. Alhamdulillah, they not only, they are dawah walking, I mean, in action. You are in New York. I don't live in New York, but I know that whenever I come, they always say, okay, today there's the distribution in Manhattan, today in Bronx, today in Jamaica. So when those things are happening, those vans are distributing food. We have medical clinics, 4 mobile clinics other than the regular clinics. When we have health fair in connection with the church, generally we do collaboration with the church and with the Islamic Center. So in the neighborhood, those people who don't have health insurance, and believe me, some people have health insurance, but they don't have $25 for the copay, and they just delay and delay till that small problem get worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are the situations, real situations. You mentioned about the story in the book. I have hundreds of these stories over the years, from disaster relief to health services. Anyway, so this is now.
I hear you.
People see you doing good.
Alhamdulillah. And I think it's, like you said, the actions do speak louder than words. And I think that's one of the best ways of modeling, what it means to walk in the footsteps of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is by helping everyone who's in need. So the next thing that you talked about was the transitional housing and helping women who have faced situations of domestic abuse, domestic violence, giving them shelter. And you mentioned that at the start of opening these transitional housing centers or locations, that maybe you weren't seeing as many, first generation individuals or individuals who maybe were in bad situations, but culturally weren't leaving. What, pushback do you receive from the community or otherwise when it comes to transitional housing for women who are maybe in domestic violence situations, if any? Is there any controversy or questions that surround the transitional housing for women?
Well, there's not as much pushback. The main thing is sometimes the lack of education. As they say, if you don't know what your eyes don't see, that don't exist. Yeah. So I think generally there was lack of education that there are such needs. So one credit which goes to ICNA Relief, with the support of the community, with our volunteers, that once these things, like we open the shelter home, and uh, those are places of really nice, clean places of dignity and respect. These are not a typical shelter home that people from the street come in and the next day again they are sent back on the street. Our shelter home is a totally different approach. We help our sisters who, for one reason or the other, are going through difficult time. They are evicted from their home, or there's a as you mentioned, domestic violence issue. They come, we help them through counseling, to finding a job, reconciliation with the family, whatever means that to having a, when they leave the shelter home, alhamdulillah, we have success rate of over 90% that they are living life of dignity. Either there's a reconciliation and they are living respectfully, or they are working and they save enough. We don't force them out of the shelter home unless they have a secure and safe and dignified place.
Of course.
So this those sisters and those imams, those leaders who see this need, they have become our ambassadors. We don't see much pushback now.
Good.
Maybe here and there individuals who don't know, they think that there are unfortunately, there's a very small, and that's not only in Muslim community, in any community, that okay, these there may be some cases that this give an opportunity to break the family. I hear these kind of comments, but I can say that a great majority of imams, community leaders, board members, they appreciate that, and we are getting a lot of support. One of the project in every city I go, this is one of the first that we raise the fund, we give you the support, just can ICNA leave, open a shelter home over here. It's difficult for a brother to be on the street, but just imagine that for a sister to be on the street.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Allah Azza wa Jal, please.
One other thing, that these shelter homes, one shelter home and two shelter home in New York don't solve all the problem. But what it does, it educates the community that these problems exist. That's greater accomplishment. Second, it puts the Muslim community on the map. There may be hundreds of other shelter homes. Even when you have one shelter home, proper, professionally run, properly registered by a Muslim community, that make you equal member of the fraternity. Now, district attorney knows that there's a shelter home. Hospitals know that there's a Muslim shelter home. Other shelter home also know the Muslim shelter home. Sometimes we exchange, if we have extra space, Catholic charity might send somebody to us. Now, any Muslim going over there will get respect.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
So this is another thing, that education and mutual respect and mutual communication with different communities, I think that's another.
It makes a big difference. Yeah, and I think being able to collaborate and not try to kind of take just or full control of a situation, but looking at what resources are out there, and collaboration is huge. And that kind of leads me to the third point that you had brought up, which is the topic of refugees and the refugee services that ICNA Relief offers. So we know that particularly within the last year with the Operation Allies Welcome and the Afghan evac, that a lot was going on in our communities, in our masajids, in our societies. We also saw it in 2013, 2014, 2015 with the Syrian refugee crisis. And a lot of times when it comes to refugee care, we do see a lot of different federal organizations. So the VOLAGs, for example, that are appointed by the US government, not many of them are Muslim oriented as agencies that provide resettlement, right? So we've got, like you said, Catholic Charities, we've got IRC, we've got CWS, Church World Service, Lutheran Services. What have you been doing as a refugee service organization to change the narrative, to bring our Muslim communities more into the front lines in serving refugee arrivals, particularly because so many of them do come from Muslim countries?
One thing, there's an old saying that bank give you loan if you have good credit. Same, those communities which are providing some services, they are recognized and their voices are heard. And ICNA Relief in every aspect of this approach, be it a disaster relief, that now we are full voting member of National VOAD and our voices are heard. Muslim sensitivities are even trainings to the different. Same happened with the refugee. that ICNA Leaf started serving the refugees. We studied the system, and we realized that just making demands is not going to work. So we started contributing, and from Syrian refugees to Burmese refugees, alhamdulillah, just last year alone, we were able to serve close to between 7 and 800,000, mostly refugees in different food pantries across the country. What happened that our work on the ground, that was pretty much appreciated and realized by the major resettlement agencies like you mentioned, Aludran, LIRS, and different state agencies and the federal level. Now, alhamdulillah, in 5 major states, ICNA Leaf is recognized as and this is the only Muslim organization who is formally recognized as a resettlement agency. There was a lot of effort and hard work of our volunteers, our workers, community support behind that, because we were already serving that. Now you mentioned the latest Afghan refugees came. We were able to connect 26,000, and that's a number which is formally registered. I mean, with the different communities, because within the masajid, within the Muslim community. So, alhamdulillah, in that area, ICNA Leaf have made a great progress on behalf of the Muslim community. That now even the Ukrainian refugees came, and many of the Ukrainian refugees, again, I repeat that the bank gave loan to the those who have credits. Similarly, now ICNA Leaf's work is well known, recognized. Now, alhamdulillah, a lot of refugees, even who are from the other parts, which are not like Ukraine, ICNA Leaf is working with them. And really, the level of, I would say, our compassion and the commitment of our volunteers is so great that in many forums, different forums, ICNA Leaf have been singled out for appreciation from the federal level to the state level. And it's not about ICNA Leaf, it's about the Muslim community. That Muslim community is really like stepping up and doing a great job for the refugees.
MashaAllah, excellent. So alhamdulillah, I'm happy to hear that, the track record really speaks for itself, and that when you are, doing that good work for the sake of Allah, that it's you truly are seen as an organization that's making a difference. So in the last few minutes that we have together in this episode, I want you to tell our viewers how they can get involved. It's Ramadan. A lot of people are looking for opportunities. And like you said, not just in terms of donations, but maybe being a volunteer, giving back in their communities. What can they do?
ICNA Leaf has 7 programs. And great strength of ICNA Leaf is the volunteers. In all 7 programs, the first thing which like it's as they say that the 360 spectrum that alhamdulillah ICNA Leaf's program, we cover every possible aspect of social services. We have health services. If you are a physician, if you are a nurse, or anybody who is related to health services, we have mobile clinics, we have other clinics. You can contribute over there. You can volunteer over there. And one is direct services, other is educating the community about these programs. Then we have hunger prevention. Like we have almost in 56, it's continuously increasing food pantries, and as I mentioned, 43 food delivery vans. You can become volunteer over there. We have a transitional home for the women and children. And actually, we opened even one for the men transitional home as well. A lot of people who go into trouble for one reason or the other, and they are serious. One thing about our transitional home, as I mentioned earlier, that we take those people who are serious to change their life. So if they are serious and they are committed, we provide them every possible help to become productive citizen in the country. Then we have back to school program, which is for the children. There are thousands and thousands of children in this country who can't afford even a new school bag, new uniform, new supplies. A small gesture of providing a new school bag can change the life of a student. And I would mention, it's personally, I come from small town, small school. In my school, until fifth grade, I did not have a classroom. It was 5 trees, and that was our classroom. When it is rain, when it is wind, it's weather is not good, you go home. That's the background I come from. So I feel for just one person, two people's word of encouragement made me to be on the top, to get to the best universities over here. So we feel very strongly that we have given more than 300,000 school bags within the last few years to the children with the supplies. That's one of our strong program, and we are expanding that to tuition assistance as well to the next level, particularly with the refugee kids. We are with a special focus on that. Then we have our counseling, Muslim family services. That's a huge program. In that, on one side, we have engaged a lot of professional counselors, and they provide counseling for the families, for the children. And we have very transparent, efficient zakat and fitrah distribution mechanism across the country, like very secure and with all confidentiality that we have. So basically, if you belong to any walks of life, disaster relief, I already mentioned that ICNA Leaf is known big nationwide, one of the leading organizations in that area. So you may be student, you may be professional in any field, from management to the health services to the school teacher. There are avenues where you can help and support ICNA Leaf. And of course, Muslim community, they donate generously in Ramadan, their zakat, their sadaqat, charity in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, I can assure you that every penny is spent in very responsible manner, in very transparent manner, and in very effective way. And it really make a positive impact in the lives of the individual and the communities.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair, Brother Maqsood, for guiding us through, the setup of ICNA Relief, the services that you provide, and, letting our viewers know how they can get involved. It sounds like there's numerous ways that our viewers can get involved and be a part of the work that ICNA Relief does. I know that you're located in many different states, so I'm sure a visit to the website can help people find where their local ICNA Relief office.
Yeah, ICNARelief.org. You can go on the Facebook, you can go on the website and see more, and viewers can see that where they can contribute. One question comes about zakat. Alhamdulillah, we have a very scientific way of that zakat is a special donation, and it has in Quran and our teachings these special purposes. We take care of that very carefully, and all that zakat eligible categories, zakat is only spent only on those categories which are zakat eligible.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much.
Another quick point I want to make before we conclude: non-profits don't solve all the problem. They cannot. After all, it's the responsibility of the tax collector, MENA government. It's a responsibility. We pay for their jobs, for their salaries, from the president to the Congress and all the from the states, all that. It's their responsibility. It's not our responsibility. We pay them tax, and Muslim community is paying large billions and billions of dollars of tax. Non-profit, those communities which are actively engaging in this country, they can make an impact. Their work, as we say, that Dawah in action, that their voices will be heard, and for that tax money is our money. It goes back to the community. That community which is actively doing social services, they can very effectively direct that money, tell their congressman, tell their councilman, school board that this is the needs of the Muslim community. Just very recently, we were able to work with USDA about the halal food and guidelines in that area. So alhamdulillah, now those voices are being heard. The other thing that very important, that it brings the collaboration of different communities. When we know each other, the great majority of the people around us, our fellow citizens, they are good-hearted people. When we work together, they know about ourselves and good teaching and good character of the Muslim community. Really, that lot of barriers are removed, and a lot of perceptions are being changed. So I think the greatest contribution of ICNA Relief is that we are paving the way for our next generation to live a life of being a proud Muslim and productive citizen. So this is I think the greatest accomplishment, that working in this country in social services will make our children to be very proud, and they will identify in positive manner with Islam and the Muslim organizations.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about ICNA Relief and for guiding us through, the important work that you do. I pray that this Ramadan is a blessed month for everyone at ICNA Relief, for the volunteers that help, and for the clients that you serve. And for our viewers, again, you know where to go, icnarelief.org, to find out more information about how you can get involved. So Jazakallah khair, Brother Maqsood, for joining us. Jazakumullah khair. Everyone out there who is watching our show, please join us again tomorrow, inshallah, as we together throughout every day of Ramadan continue to learn about how we can balance Deen and Dunya by speaking to our community service leaders, our organization leaders, our founders, CEOs, and others. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much. May Allah bless you, bless your family and families of all our viewers and the team of this channel for bringing the Muslim community closer to each other. And thank you for your wonderful.